We appreciate it. I know you've got a busy schedule. Let's start there. Why are you in South Carolina?
Well, I'm campaigning for President of the United States, David. I believe that the American people need a real choice, and the two major party candidates today are practically two peas in a pod. The dissatisfaction of the American people has never been higher toward the two major party candidates, and I'm here in South Carolina to let people know that they have a real alternative to the two major parties.
How are you so different?
I am the only candidate that is proclaiming loudly and clearly to the American people that the real battle today in America is not between Republicans and Democrats, it's not between liberals and conservatives, it's between Americans and globalists. John McCain is a globalist. Barack Obama is a globalist. Chuck Baldwin is an American. I believe that we must preserve the independence and national sovereignty of our country, that all of our freedoms and our liberties are totally dependent upon that. With the two major party candidates, what we have is CFR Party A versus CFR Party B. And I want to provide an alternative to the American people with a candidate that will say loudly and clearly that we're going to put America first. For example, illegal immigration. What's going on in the southern part of our country is nothing short of an invasion. I just came back from there a couple of weeks ago and I saw firsthand what's going on. David, it's 10 times worse than you can imagine. It's a war zone. Ronald Reagan said years ago that a nation without borders is not a nation. And right now we're a nation without borders. And as a result, we are losing the security and the sovereignty of our country. I'm the only candidate for president who's made a commitment to the American people that I will secure our borders. United Nations, for example, John McCain, Barack Obama firmly support the policies and the institution of the United Nations. I believe the United Nations is a sinister organization. I believe it works against the interest of America. As president, I would lead America out of the United Nations.
One thing that's been a hotbed issue, of course, the past several years has been Iraq and the war over there, Iraq and Afghanistan. Your thoughts on that?
Right. Regardless of whether we believe we should have invaded Iraq or not, I personally believe that we should not have invaded. And I'll just say this, as President of the United States, David, I would never send American forces to invade another country without a declaration of war by Congress first. Chuck Baldwin, as president, would immediately put in place an exit strategy, would bring our troops out of Iraq as soon as we safely and securely could, so that we might better defend the international interests of our country, especially as it relates to our national security.
I think a lot of the polls right now are saying that the economy is a key issue on people's minds in their lives and in this election. We've heard all kinds of different plans on how that might be improved by the candidates. Your thoughts?
Yes. The economy is the result of an overreach by the federal government and an intrusion into economic matters that should be better left to free market forces. The more government you have, the less freedom you have, and that's the problem with our economy today. What I believe we need to do is severalfold. First of all, we need to eliminate the income tax. We need to get rid of the Internal Revenue Service. We need to wean ourselves away from the Federal Reserve System. We need to go back to the constitutional prescription for sound money principles. I've got this fantasy, David, where I've just awakened as president, and I have just appointed Ron Paul Secretary of the Treasury. I believe that he understands sound money principles better than anybody on Capitol Hill. And I believe that he would put in force the necessary changes that we need to bring America back to those sound money principles. As we get rid of the income tax and the IRS, the Federal Reserve System, we must also slash federal spending. We've got to eliminate those federal departments. We've got to slash federal spending across the board. And then at the same time, and then and only then, as we do all of the above, then I would promote and suggest and propose a 10% across the board tariff on all imports into the United States. This meets the constitutional prescription for the underwriting of the federal government by duties, imposts, and tariffs, as it says under Article 1. Also, it would do that which needs to be done to provide for the limited federal funds that are necessary, and at the same time, it would unleash the productivity and prosperity of the American people by getting the federal government, the IRS, off of their backs, out of their pocketbooks, and let them produce what we are capable of producing.
Big debate going on now in our state and in many parts of the country about fuel prices and drilling for oil here abroad, what we should do there to tackle the energy problem?
It's unconscionable that we have allowed ourselves to be dependent upon OPEC, for example, for our energy needs. I'm told that we have more oil and natural gas in Alaska than we do in the entire country of Saudi Arabia. We have just found huge deposits of oil and natural gas and coal in the Dakotas, as well as in the Gulf of Mexico. And I believe that we can do this, and we can do it in the next 4 to 5 years. If America really set its mind to it, if it had the support, the real support of the President and the Congress, there is no reason why we could not be energy independent in the next 4 years. Obviously, with also looking at alternative energy such as wind and solar.
There are some who claim now the oil companies are already hoarding a bunch of property already with plenty of oil down there, and they're just not drilling because it's not profitable enough for them, and they're already getting windfall taxes. And
I think by making America energy independent and by not giving OPEC a free ride into the marketplaces of America and getting back to old-fashioned competition between American companies and industries, that problem would go away by itself.
Healthcare, another hot button issue. Lots of talk about how much government should be involved in that, and how much of it should be privatized or held, taken care of some other manner.
Well, Social Security obviously is a big concern on the part of many seniors, and I certainly understand that. Look, you cannot tell people in their 60s and 70s who have paid into Social Security all their lives that all of a sudden you're on your own. That's just not practical, it's not reasonable, certainly not compassionate. People that have paid into the system for years, that are expecting the Social Security to be there for them, they should have a right to realize those expectations. And so I certainly believe that people in their elderly years should have access to the Social Security system that they have paid into all those years. However, for the younger Americans, the Americans in their 20s and 30s who are just beginning their careers, who are trying to build their nest eggs for the future and so forth, I believe that we must begin to privatize that situation to allow them, number one, to better prepare for their own retirement, and number two, to relieve the burden that is placed on the taxpayers. And I personally propose the idea of using insurance policies for this purpose. I think that this plan would be very agreeable and accessible to most Americans. It would provide more income in the elderly years than does Social Security today, and many of the private competitors as well.
Okay. Somebody might be saying, Chuck Baldwin, haven't heard of him. Give me some background about you and why you're interested in this office.
Well, I'm interested because the American people deserve a choice. And right now, as I said at the beginning of this interview, I don't think the American people really have a choice. The two major parties have grown closer and closer together over the years. And especially this year, when you look at Barack Obama and John McCain, there's very little distinguishable difference. In fact, there has never been more dissatisfaction among the American people for the two major party candidates than there is this year. I just saw a survey where 50% of the Republicans in America today don't even trust their own candidate, John McCain. Many Democrats are not pleased with Barack Obama. There are undecided voters out there at higher levels than ever before. We're offering the American people a real viable alternative, someone they can vote for, not just someone they can vote against. Someone who wants to put America first, someone who wants to secure our borders, someone who wants to return to a non-interventionist, non-adventuristic foreign policy. Someone who believes in constitutional government, who believes in the Fourth Amendment, who will not trample our rights in the name of protecting us, in the name of national security. I do not believe that we have to take away people's rights in order to protect them. And I think when we look at the enemies that we face today, it might be Washington, D.C. a whole lot more than it is some of the foreign nations that we tend to talk about. So I believe that our party and my message is the same message of Thomas Jefferson and George Washington. I believe if they were alive today, David, they'd be voting for Chuck Baldwin for president in 2008. Because I believe that we have that same message. And if people really don't like what they see in the two major parties, they're not happy, they're not satisfied, we are an alternative. We're the fastest growing party in America. We are the third largest party already in America. And people are coming to us in greater numbers. And the two nominees that are the candidates are not sending forth this message. Somebody's got to bring the message. And so, David, that's Chuck Baldwin in 2008.